Sheila Singh, your podcast host, and I'd like to welcome you to the My Brand HQ podcast, all things personal branding for career acceleration. This podcast is for talented, ambitious career professionals like you who are wanting to be perceived as a thought leader, to be top of mind to those that matter, and to make an impact and stand out, be that in your team, your organization, or your industry, and to be inspired by other successful leaders. I will be interviewing high-achieving career professionals who have carved out a successful career in their field and are open to sharing their career journey, their challenges, their learnings and insights with you, someone who is looking to establish your personal brand and accelerate your career. Through my personal branding and coaching practice, I enable career professionals primarily in the technology industry to earn more money, to increase their salary. In fact, I spoke to all of my past clients that I've worked with over several years and learned that actually overall, they've received an average of 47% increase in their package. Would that be a great place to be? They've also all achieved at least one, if not more, promotions or moved on to a higher level in their career at another organization. And they're looking to advance their career while showing up as the best version of themselves. If this sounds like you, then do reach out to me and let's have a chat. And why do I do this? Well, during my corporate career spanning 25 years, I quickly realized that hard work alone was not enough to get me to where I wanted to be and the success that I strive for. And my belief is that hard work, coupled with creating and establishing a strong personal brand, can both influence and accelerate your career and get you to where you want to be. In today's episode of My Brand HQ, I'm speaking with Temi Onanuga. Temi has a BSc Honours in Economics, a Master's in Information Systems, and is an INSEAD Business School alumni, where she completed her executive education and obtained the certificate in Global Management and Leadership. She's a collaborative leader with strong stakeholder management experience and well-rounded in strategy and execution. She also has a breadth of experience working within consultancy, oil and gas trading, government, and financial institutions. She's experienced in managing and delivering risk and regulatory projects and capability lead within risk and the infrastructure domain. Temi is currently a client manager leading strategic initiatives within her organization, and she's actively involved in professional mentoring, talent building, charities, and volunteering initiatives. A keen entrepreneur who also has a passion for mentoring youth and young females and has invested in nurturing this passion through structured training. She's a wife and mother of 3, and in her spare time enjoys her quiet time, golf, a good gym workout, and singing. In today's episode, Temi shares how she took the opportunity to learn, grow, and focus on business outcomes while working in a male-dominated environment, why cultivating your social capital is core to your brand and essential for career progression, what to consider when honing your reputation and building relationships that matter, the power of collaboration to empower teams and drive inclusion and success, and how to influence and lead without authority. So let's head over and hear what Temi has to say. Temi, hi, and welcome to My Brand HQ. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you here. And I want to start by asking you, I want you to share with me your views about your journey into tech and into banking. So the why and the how, but also to expand a little bit on that in terms of D&I and what it's like being a minority in that environment, what experiences you've had.
Interesting. Okay, first of all, thanks for having me. And I will tackle the first question, which is my journey into banking, and then we'll talk about D&I. So my journey into banking started from, I'll say year 2000, so to speak. I have a first degree in economics and I have a master's in information systems. And I started out I wanted to be a developer. I did the OCPs, the Oracle Certified exams. And soon realized that, that was not for me.
Why was that?
Because I realized that I didn't want to be technical, so to speak.
Right.
I didn't want to be a coder, right? But I could leverage coding skills, which obviously plays out a lot now in the area where I work, even within banking. So that was my first stint. And then soon after that, I decided that I wanted to follow Oracle professional path. So I did a role in Oracle applications as an Oracle applications functional expert. That was good at the time. I majored on Oracle HRMS and payroll. That was good at the time. And then there was a bit of a change again in direction where there was noise about, well, maybe not noise. There was kind of bandwagon move towards software testing, software analysis, business analysis, and project management. So somehow I left the Oracle path and then I went into software analysis. And then I did that for a season working with consultancies. Now, because I'd worked in consultancies, I'd worked in government organizations such as DEFRA, one of the things that happened in that journey was that I had to be, what's that thing now I had to be cleared. I had to be cleared, security clearance.
Oh yeah, security clearance.
Yeah. So that was quite a fascinating thing, having to be cleared to do certain type of roles. So I was in government for a bit, and then I went into consultancies. Now, this was where the grounding started. And I was then exposed to more of coding, using harnesses, and that was fun for a season. And then I found myself in oil and gas, which was when I worked at Shell, and I loved it. In Shell, I was working in contingent risks and working on trading systems as a business analyst. And when I saw that side of things, I thought, okay, this is fine. This is really cool. And there is a bit of a niche, in risks at the time, even though I was on the contingent risk side. So, but that opened a bit of new world to me, if you know what I mean, compared to what I was doing before, which was strictly software analysis and software testing. So after my role at Shell, a role came up at RBS, which was for market risk. And it was market risk at the time. And I just strolled in and said, well, I have experience with contingent risk. Here is, what I've done at Shell. And I described my role being an analyst on a trading platform, energy credit, all of those things. And I tied it back to what they required. Obviously, theirs was market risk. And I just kind of explained how, contingent risk sat in the middle somehow. So you'd have your conforming banks, you have your intermediaries actually being, being responsible for ensuring that the counterparties don't default on risks, that kind of thing. So somehow I was able to tie it together, and then I got the role. And once I got the role at RBS, for me, it was, okay, why don't I just stay within risks? Yeah, why don't I just stay within risk and, make myself more proficient in that side of things. And that was how the journey to banking started. But prior to that, before I went to Shell, I'd worked at HSBC, where I worked on their bespoke client management system. Again, that was good as well. It was a good break into banking, so to speak. But then going to RBS meant I was then now in risks. And I thought, this is where I'm going to kind of stay and grow myself there. By the time I was leaving RBS and went to backup, again, I'd done quite a few risk metrics. RBS was where there was a lot of grounding, because there I worked on the portfolio analysis, portfolio analytics, and I was working very, very closely with quants. It was fascinating. I love quantitative analysts because they're very, very smart upstairs. I respect them till tomorrow. Anytime I see a quants person, I'm like, yeah, because at RBS, I had fun working with them as a business analyst, working on credit portfolio analytics. I still remember some of the modules that I was responsible for in that role. And the fact that, that was a grounding that set me up for the role in backup. And then in backup, obviously, they wanted someone who had worked on market risk. So which then meant that I was coming from RBS, where I had done predominantly credit and market risk. And then I went on to backup and then continued to grow my knowledge, or should I say my expertise in risks. And then obviously that then took me to DB. Now, in that whole journey, were there many women? So I'm just trying to weave it into D&I now. Were there many women? Maybe not in risks, but I came across quite a few as well. But again, in risk, you would find that while you're coming across quite a few, it's still male dominated. Okay, if I look at where I am, for example, I know that there is a lot of focus on diversity and in fact, inclusion. But when I look at the outcomes, I see that it's more a catch-22 situation. There are not many women in risks. There are not many women in STEM roles, which is obviously science, technology, engineering, and maths. And yeah, so that's my journey, and this is where we are to date. In terms of D&I, which is diversity and inclusion, I think most of the time I've worked more with men. But then I'm seeing that change in recent times because a number of organizations are now inviting perspectives. They are now putting in, measures to ensure that women are given a bit more opportunity. And organizations, and certainly mine, one of them, are now putting KPIs in as well to measure those. So while we're seeing an improvement in the entire trend, the fact still is not until more women start to take on STEM roles, not until that time would we start to see, a major uptake and of course an advancement in this whole diversity and inclusion move. Mm-hmm. So yeah, so that's it in a nutshell, really.
And so tell me then, you said most of where you've been has been predominantly male dominated. So what impact, if any, did that have on you?
If you ask me, I would say fantastic impact. I think men are wired differently. They're wired differently. Personally, I learned from different types of characters. I try to prioritize what I want to learn from an individual over whether or not they're male or female. Now, I think working with men in that whole time set up one or two things in me in terms of the way I work to an extent, which I've now had to try and, make small changes, so to speak, okay? Because one thing that I always say is that if you want the same result, right, that someone who you refer to as a man gets, for example, you should be willing to give a little bit as well, at least match them in terms of the outcomes, so that there is no free lunch, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. And because I've had to work in those environments, I've had to really buckle up in my mindset as well. I've had to try and work to speed, for example. That doesn't mean that men work to speed all the time, but I've had to at least ensure that, whatever is asked of me, I try to get clarity and I try to deliver. So priority for me is being clear on what I've been asked to do and ensuring that I'm delivering, and ensuring as well that I'm finding allies in those men. Because what I find is men are quite, they're quite willing to, I might be wrong, but this is my experience, they're quite willing to nurture. Yeah, maybe because of the way, the way we've all been made somehow. Men, when you come across to a man that you need help, more often than not, they will try to help. But when you come across like you know it all, for example. Even in relationships, apart from work, when you come across like you know it all, men will tend to back off. So in my old journey, what I've tried to do is, in many cases, not come across like, oh, I know it all, I'm the new, girl in the woods or wherever that has been, hired to bring you the whole solution that you're looking for. No, I try to learn, and I try to be as vulnerable as possible while not taking back my own value add, because obviously I always say that everyone has something to add, including me. And before you get onto a role, for example, we all know that we all get interviewed. So if someone gets a role, it means they've been interviewed, they've gone through a process. Therefore, we should be able to test, or we should be able to trust that everybody has something to add. So for me, it's being open and willing to learn. And I've been able to learn a lot from men in the course of my journey.
And I like that approach to the situation. It's like, rather than going in and saying, oh my God, it's like male dominated, and just like, just feeling uncomfortable with it, is actually embracing it and saying, okay, what can I learn from this situation? What can I learn from these people? And building those relationships. And I think that's really important. And to be honest, that's been my experience through my career, has been predominantly male dominated environments, but actually it's worked very, very well. And I have had the opportunity to learn from
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
I don't consider gender.
Correct. Exactly. For me, for a number of years, it was never a thing.
Yeah.
Is anyone, it started to become more prevalent on I guess on social media, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, right now I'm realizing and recognizing it. But at the time it was never like, oh, well, I shouldn't be here, or someone's better than me or lesser than me or anything like that. I was just like, just work with people. Yeah. And as you say there, about there being no free lunch, it's about the outcomes ultimately. And if you deliver the value that you bring and what you deliver, and I think that's where we want to be focusing on. More importantly, if we're in that situation and we're finding uncomfortable, okay, what can I do? What am I bringing to the table here?
Exactly.
Am I delivering to my outcomes?
Exactly.
So thank you for sharing that. That's really, really fundamental, I believe. And tell me, when it comes to sort of leading on from that, when it comes to networking and relationships, what does it do for career progression, would you say?
So you've just touched on something that is quite an interesting topic and a focus area for me in recent times. So before now, I will talk about networking from the theory. Understanding that networking is good for us. And I think in the last few years, I started to kind of take my own pills around the topic of networking. So I'll just start by putting a bit of a definition around it. So we do know that networking helps us to improve our social capital. I like that word, social capital, because when you're talking about economic capital, everyone talks about, how you need to, know your probabilities, how you need to know your exposure, so that you know what to hold in terms of capital. Right now, we're talking about social capital, your social bank, okay? And the fact that we're tying it to the word social. Now, networking is great for career building, great for career development. It involves building your social capital. And to do that, one needs to network proactively, okay, to improve one's brand. Now, you can't really talk about networking without talking about branding, but I'll keep branding for now. It's worth mentioning anyway that obviously your brand plays a key role in your career progression. Yeah. And one of the key things to cultivate one's brand or to harness one's brand is networking. When you think of brand, it is who you know. It's no longer who you know. It is who knows you, your relationships, your social capital. What are you known for? Your reputation. And how do people experience you? So sometimes this, buzzwords can actually come across as buzzwords, but in real in reality, they are terms, or should I say things that we need to pay attention to when it comes to our career development and career goals. So we cannot talk about branding, like I said, without touching on network. And because we care about our brand, then we need to increase our social capital. We need to increase our networks. We need to build deep relationships. Deep relationships, which not only improves, our social capital. So I'm using the word social capital interchangeably for the word networking, so that maybe that way it can connect with somebody, and then it can help someone to extrapolate as to, oh my goodness, networking is actually my social capital. So it helps to build deep relationships, which, will not only improve our social capital, as I mentioned earlier, but it helps us to build and nurture those relationships, okay? Again, to sharpen our brand, or should I say to increase the quality of our brand, for example, we need to keep lines of communications open. And how do you keep lines of communications open? It's through networking. Yeah, it's through networking. For me to be able to go across and let Layla know, what my interests are, my accomplishments, my areas of expertise, I have to network. Otherwise, you're just like, a networking butterfly. You are all over the place, you're visible, but you're shallow. So networking really is building social capital to support our career development. I cannot overemphasize this. And in doing that, so I try to kind of break some grounds by interlinking it to branding without necessarily, delving into branding itself. But as part of making it clear what you stand for, yeah, as part of making it clear on the minds of people, what your key attributes are, networking is one that is core on mind, and we have to be strategic. So being strategic in networking obviously means we're mapping and we're planning our networks. So it is, who do I need to be in sync with and why? Understanding my why and how. Okay. There is also the need as well to have a diverse network, which is that bit that helps our quotient. You need to have a positive quotient, which is a balance of different kinds of people, different levels, different, because to invite perspective, you need to network with different people. Interestingly, towards the end of last year, I said to myself that I wanted to start networking with people that are not like me. Guess what my why was? Innovation. Because I need to invite perspective. I need to be able to draw insights from people. And I won't be able to do that if I don't open myself to be able to network with those people that I think, oh my goodness, this person is not from where I come from, or this person is not in the same field as me, or this person, just what I mean? So it's opening myself to wider perspectives. Another thing with networking is it gives us an opportunity to pay it forward. Okay, to pay it forward. So if you're networking with someone who is more senior than you, the reality is they're paying it forward by doing that, because they are pouring of themselves into you. They are either mentoring or they are sponsoring as a way. And guess what? They are willing to do that. Or you would never get that opportunity if you don't reach out to such people. But the awareness that people are there willing to, network, willing to help our career development is key. Again, we need to create a diverse network. We need to set dedicated time for this. We need to make it like a project, which is what I started to do when the whole, the essence of networking became very, very clear to me. I would connect with friends. You need to make time for it. I will connect with family, because guess what? A tree does not make a forest. Even for your mental wellness, we need to network. So we could be networking for very many different reasons. It could be you setting out to keep in touch with a former colleague. It could be, setting up concrete plans to actually nurture and leverage your network. So if you don't build it, so it's about building, to then leverage. And when you build, you nurture those networks. Identify, the key relationships that matter, be it for your personal growth, because it's not always about, I want to be promoted or I want to, it's not necessarily about career only. Sometimes it is your personal growth, your wellness, sometimes it's to bounce ideas. But guess what? If you don't have that social capital, you will not be able to bank on it. You will not be able to pull from it. And of course, appreciating those networks is part of nurturing them. And then focusing on the quality of it and not the quantity. So I find that once I have decided to be flexible about the way I network, I just go there open. You learn from people and they learn from you as well. And you're able to, take feedback on the fly, as it were. So I can go on and on about the topic of networking. And like I said, in recent times, I've thought, you know what? Apart from what it means theoretically, there's a lot to be gained if we can swing into action and just explore, really.
Yeah. Yeah, and I completely agree with you on this. Being intentional about, as you put it, building your social capital, it is fundamental to in all areas of your life. But when we look at our careers, it's basics. It's who knows you. It's what people know about you. And something that was shared to me very early on in my career was that because I was very quiet, and I was told, well, you're good at what you do, but you'll struggle to move up the ladder because people don't know who you are, what you're about, what value you bring to the table. You need to make yourself known.
Absolutely.
And initially I found that hard to do, but then you've got to do it because people don't know.
Yeah. And you need to step out somehow.
Yeah.
And even if it's just a small group, because it's got to be, there's a quality as well. Not stepping out at all is an issue. But when you step out, and it starts to get better. And if within a small, cycle of trust, so to speak, or a small cycle, that cycle can speak for you. It is contagious, right? But you've got to step out. That's the starting point.
Absolutely.
And I think another thing that comes to mind is the issue of preferences, personality types, which can be the reason why some can struggle. The reason why networking was a topic for me started from my personality type. I'm first an introvert. Now, when I tell people that I'm an introvert, they would argue, but let's just park that for another day.
Yeah, I think we can have a conversation on personality types alone, actually. And I'm learning more and more that, I think people see me as an extrovert, and I used to be incredibly shy. And now reading more about introvert versus extrovert, recognizing that I'm actually probably more an introvert.
Exactly.
It's all about perception there as well. And just coming back to what you said with the networking, I think something that I want to touch on there that is pertinent is where you talked about new perspectives. So having a diverse network at different levels, different experiences, different backgrounds, it's going in, as you say, open and willing to learn. Yeah, because that's a great way of learning for everybody. It's just hearing other people's views, opinions, them sharing their knowledge, and as you said, it being innovative as well. It's innovation. It's just hearing things in a different way, a different perspective. Absolutely. So there is so much that cultivating and nurturing those networks can bring to all of us.
Absolutely. It opens a world of invisible tools.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have an issue that you don't even realize that is much of an issue. You're still brewing it. And then you reach out to a network and everything disappears. Because if it's someone who is more senior, for example, straight away you get a tool. If it's someone who is maybe in another area, another domain from you, for example, assuming if this was networking in the organization, you get an insight straight into not only that idea, for example, not only that issue, or even wider perspectives. I could go on and on and on about, you know, the pros of networking, you know, and like, because we said earlier, you could be doing it for any reason, for very many different reasons. Even for moms, for example, as you're raising a family, you need to network. As fathers, people need to network, because that's how you reach out to, you know, to get information. That's how you need reach out for fresh ideas. That's how you reach out to test your own approach, because in reaching out to others, you're able to stress test whatever it is, you know, that you're already doing, you know, and then to learn more, to gain a wider perspective. Yeah.
Completely. So talk to me about, when it comes to relationships, talk to me about the power of collaboration across teams and groups within the business.
Good question. Power of collaboration. I think collaboration is that thing that fosters a fair strategy process. Okay, and I'll tell you what I mean. Especially in recent times, that there's a lot of reference to agile leadership, which means there is a shift from command and control. To get things done, again, down to this issue of wider perspective, appreciating what every person contributes and what everyone can contribute. The way to get that out and enrich the organization is by collaborating, okay? It is the ability to carry others along, which means when people are being carried along, you get better out of them. It is influencing without authority. Again, there are quite a few things that will come into play, such as presence, you know, such as your approach. It is very key to engage and focus energy on, you know, on getting an objective framed, for example, before ever jumping into, you know, exploring or executing strategy. And I find that in framing the objective, in collaborating with, you know, teams, in collaborating with leadership, for example, you get to refine an objective. So you get clarity before you go into execution. And as you continue to frame and collaborate with teams, so obviously when you go into execution, for example, you need a team or a group. Collaboration is even more key for diverse perspective. So you've touched on a very, very strong, or should I say a very, very important leadership element there. And we could go on and on the topic of collaboration. Now, what I'm finding as well is for cultures, because there's a cultural dimension there, as in some cases, for cultures where collaboration is not appreciated, sometimes it is deemed as indecision on the part of a leader. So while you are trying to collaborate, invite perspectives so that you can refine an objective and all of that, which obviously sets everyone up for success. While you're doing that, which to me is like breaking the grounds, having the right foundations, it sets everyone up for success. If you're within a culture where everything is command and control, or where everyone is even uninformed as to, you know, a fair process of delivering strategy, for example, that can come across like, what's she even doing? How long are we going to keep talking and collaborating? Why don't we just do it? So that is another dynamic that is worth bringing into it. But again, for mature systems, or should I say mature organizations, where, you know, leadership attributes such as collaboration is appreciated, then it empowers teams. It empowers teams, and it empowers teams not only in terms of inclusion, it also drives success. Because when you carry the views from the very beginning, when you frame the objectives and everyone is clear on what is expected and onboarded, then you can go into exploration or execution of your strategy, knowing that at least, you were clear on whatever it was that was required, either of yourself or as a group. So I can't overemphasize on, what collaboration can do to teams.
Yeah. Powerful stuff.
Businesses, and to business as well.
And I think that leads on nicely from the relationships and networking, because that makes the collaboration much easier as a process.
Absolutely.
When you're already nurturing the relationships.
Absolutely. And then, even if you don't have the network, if you have a mindset that wants to collaborate, then you start to even build networks. So imagine you leading a program or an objective, and you have to work with people that you don't know. If you have a mindset that wants to collaborate to get the results done, then you have to obviously build new relationships and nurture those relationships, because objectives are delivered by people, and to be able to get there, you need to be able to carry people along and collaborate.
Most definitely. And you talked earlier on, when you were describing, the power of the collaboration, you talked about influence without authority. So a little around presence. So tell me a little bit more about that. What are your thoughts on that?
So presence, I think, is one word that gets thrown about a lot. And I'm sure you can attest to that.
Absolutely, yeah.
In the offices, presence, executive presence. And when I started to weave my head around it, I think just understanding that, so I pride myself as a collaborative leader, okay? And obviously it goes beyond collaboration. You need to be able to engage and influence as well. And I think the more I understood that to demystify presence in itself is understanding that it is the how of you actually delivering without authority. That was like a penny drop for me. That was like the penny. So I'm not afraid to use the word presence now, because I know that it's simple. It's been simplified in my head. It's a topic that I like to talk about very freely. It is how you show up in person. Yeah, it is how you show up in person. And I'm quite excited, that, the simple definition of it hopefully can connect with somebody when you talk about it in a very, very, simple way. It is how you show up when you are either online or virtual or in person. How do you land with people? So we talked about collaboration just now. You have a group of people, a team of people, you have to deliver an objective. How do you drive that whole process? How do you include others, for example? How do you land with people in the room? What is the experience of you? Because it's all of this perception of you that would determine how you will be able to lead without authority. So the dictionary definition of executive presence says it is the ability to influence through, actually, maybe not the full dictionary word, but it's a caption from the dictionary that I like to use, is the ability to influence through audience perception of one's characteristics, which makes a leader exert influence beyond that conferred through formal authority. Isn't that awesome? I want to read it out again. It is the ability to influence through audience perception of one's characteristics, making a leader exert influence beyond that conferred through formal authority. It is so key, especially when we talk about agile leadership. So you know the way agile structures are. It's a break away from traditional system where you have Layla or Mr. Adams having 1 million people under them. Sometimes you don't even have teams sometimes, but you have to work with teams. So when I say you don't have teams, meaning you don't have people reporting into you as your team member, but you have tribes, you have squads, you have agile teams, yeah, that work with you. How do you influence those individuals, for example, without you being their managers? Should you only be able to influence people because you're their manager? So this is where presence comes in. It is leading without authority. It is being able to co-create outcomes with strangers. It is being able to draw perspectives and still provide direction. So still taking the lead without authority over a group of people. So again, when we are, so the question will then be, so what exactly are the core things that we need to be talking about when you talk about presence? Body language, pay attention to your body language. It says a lot about us. How do we express ourselves when we speak? What is our attitude? How do people see us? Because our attitude and the fact that it's got to be positive, it makes it possible to convey our brand. Again, we land on this brand topic. So your presence makes it easy to convey your brand, okay? It's about, and I think the fun thing as well is that it's about making small adjustments, okay? Making small adjustments, being open to feedback and then working backwards to say, okay, this is the perception of me when I'm in the room. Maybe I twiggle my thumb sometimes, or maybe I'm constantly nodding. By the way, this was one that I had to work on a little bit. I didn't even realize that I was doing that, but it was me helping you understand that I'm actually following you and I'm really with you. But obviously your stance comes to play as well. Your stance comes to play, understanding your behaviors, your blockers, what are your drivers, just making those small changes and working on them. And then obviously being our authentic self, checking ourselves that we're not struggling with, being confident, because all of this show very, very easily. So just to kind of pull it together a little bit, it is tied to 3 key things in my view. The first one is gravitas, which is how you act. How you act and how this is, perceived. The second one is communication. And communication is a wide area. We could delve into communication as something else in itself, because when you're talking about communication, you're looking at things like, the way you present, you're looking at mindsets, you're looking at techniques and elements, you're looking at communication intelligence, which is a different world in itself. The third one for presence would be your appearance. We like it or not, it matters. Appearance does matter. And then some areas to focus on obviously would be focus in itself, intellect comes to play. We need to be able to own our message. We need to have a message mindset, because those are the kind of things that build the perception of us. Sometimes perception even starts before you get into the room.
Yeah.
And then the presence obviously is, how are you presenting when you're in someone's space or when someone is in your space? Charisma, poise. How tolerable are we? How open are we? Do we have an open body language or a closed one, as it were? There's another interesting one, cultural fit. Culture fit. And I think this goes from organization to organization as well. This can also affect the perception of, us, which again ties to this whole topic of presence. Our intelligence as well. How do we convey our messages, and how do we conduct ourselves in the face of our passions? So these are just, a few things that come to mind when I think of the topic of presence. It is our status, our reputation, our appearance, as we mentioned earlier, our projected confidence. This is one that, is very, very key for everyone, because sometimes, I don't know about you, but I'm sure somehow you might connect to it. Confidence can be, like yo-yo.
Yeah.
While we always say
circumstances, the situation you're in.
Thank you. So while we always say, be open to feedback, I always say to people, for the people that I mentor within my organization, I say to them, feedback is a very strong tool. It is very, very good, but make sure you're very, very careful what you do with feedback as well. Because feedback is 50% of the giver's perception. It's taking it in, making small changes, acknowledging areas of change, and doing what you need to do to be a better version of you, but definitely not to pull you down.
Yeah.
Because if you don't do feedback, if you don't use feedback positively, it quickly affects your confidence. And once your confidence is out, your presence is as zero as can be. And it's so easy. It is so easy for anyone to identify when you are struggling. So while we're taking feedback, we need to be ensuring that we are, not losing confidence while we're dealing with, whatever it is that we have to deal with. So
I think, the way to look at it as well is feedback is learning.
Absolutely.
And we're always looking to learn. And as you say, we want to be a better version of ourselves. So learning by taking on the feedback. An important part of that as well, to your point about maintaining the confidence, is being aware of the intention of the person giving the feedback.
Absolutely.
Is it somebody who you can trust, who has your best interests at heart, who is one of your sponsors, your supporters, your advocates? Because, somebody could just be having a really bad day and share something that could really bring you down. You need to have that level of awareness of others, of what's going on for others. And that comes into the emotional intelligence as well, to be able to pick up on that and think, okay, I'm not going to take that personally. And you may want to go back at a later date and explore it further with that person to really understand, is it true? Or, okay, so if this is what you're saying to me, what is it about that? What is it that I can do better? So rather than having received a put me down or a criticism that isn't particularly helpful, seek out the constructive version of that.
And you've nailed it. You know why I say that? Because most times feedback can be a projection from that person. Depends on what day they're having. It depends on their perception of the world. It depends on, sometimes it could be their circumstances. And we just need to be mindful of that. We need to know where that message is coming from. And like you said, I like what you said about ensuring that it's from people that you can trust. So if it's someone that you know that you can trust, like a mentor, a sponsor, or a manager that has your interest at heart, for example, then you don't have to work too hard as to whether, it's coming from a good place or not. So knowing where it's coming from and knowing the why is the plus. I mean, presence is the X factor. According to Peter Drucker, it says it's the ability to hear what is not being said. Yeah. But while we are listening to what is not being said, we still need to be our authentic selves, right?
Yeah.
So it is not about copying others. It is about building into our own style to make our own authenticity work. There has to be a Temi in it after all. I have my own, characteristics, or should I say I have my own qualities that make me me, right? So authenticity plays a very, very key role in all of this. So always keep authenticity in mind when it comes to presence, while making the small changes to be our better versions, and always question ourselves as well. Again, I always talk about experiments. So sometimes if it's something that I'm working on, maybe around an area, maybe presence, or maybe I want to listen more or something, when I'm in that moment, I try to refresh and remind myself to say, okay, so how are you doing in that, and how did you do? And then having those retrospectives as well also helps. And then that helps kind of refine our behaviors as we go, because again, nobody's perfect. It's about making those small changes so that we can be better versions of ourselves.
Yeah.
Another thing that comes to mind actually is spatial awareness. In a lot of leadership trainings, or they refer to that as the fourth dimension of leadership presence, spatial awareness. And I really like that word because it helps to weave in the whole concept of inclusion. So there's a lot of noise on diversity, and some people even lump that together as a diversity and inclusion, but efforts are targeted towards just diversity. What about inclusion? What about inclusion? So spatial awareness is me as a leader owning my space, which helps my presence. Apart from owning space, I'm willing to share my space. So this way, I'm opening up to include others. And in addition to that, I'm willing to give space. Giving space means I invite someone. I'm intentional to include someone. I'm intentional to draw perspective by actually inviting someone into a conversation. Because inclusion is not something that you can measure. Like diversity that people can put KPIs on. Inclusion is more how people feel. In a meeting, how do I feel enough to contribute? In a meeting, what attitude do you go into those meetings with to help a woman, for example, speak up? Are you that person that talks down on a female voice every now and again? Or are you that woman that maybe because of an experience that you've had in the past, you are, on the edge, so you're not willing to take in perspectives? So spatial awareness plays a very, very, very key role as part of presence. It could be that leader who is very, very used to giving space. You would go far. It could be that person who is willing to share their space. Oh my goodness, you would have a lot of followers and you would have great outcomes in your meeting. And are you that leader who is always able to own their space? Oh my goodness, you're doing a fantastic job because you have a strong presence, a positive presence. So yeah, and all of that woven together with our mindset, the way we present our messages, our alignment, our confidence curve, all of those define, the way we would actually come across, or should I say land with people, either virtually or in person. We could go on and on the topic of presence. We could talk about many things. We could talk about the face, the eyes, even things like, sudden drop of excitement. There's a lot of reference in recent times to leaders as energy givers. Can you believe that?
Interesting.
Since COVID, since the whole of COVID, the experience that we've had, the last 2 years, there is a bit more expectation from leaders to not only lead from the front, but to actually give energy to their teams. So easily, if you're a leader that you cannot, fulfill that, for example, that already starts to affect your people's perception of you.
Indeed, yeah.
So yeah,
it's being able to adapt to these changing times.
Exactly. And adapting well enough to still be your authentic self, because at the end of the day, you're first an individual. So while you're trying to, have a good presence, you're trying to work on this, you still have to be your authentic self.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree there. Authenticity is key. And I think some people try so hard to put on this mask and lose their authentic self in the workplace because they feel they should behave a certain way, they should look a certain way, and so forth. And if you think about the energy that you're putting into doing that, when you could be placing that energy more productively and effectively in doing a great job, in delivering the value, and to doing all of the things that you've talked about here today, I think this is a great conversation around leadership, ultimately, in terms of the things that we've touched upon, about relationships, social capital. You talked about collaboration, the power of collaboration, and self-awareness and presence, the importance of presence, and the breaking that down into the different attributes of that. All of these things are critical for showing up as a great leader. So Temi, I want to say thank you so much for sharing with us today. And as an INSEAD Business School alumni with a certificate in global management and leadership, tell me, what is next for you?
So learning is continuous. Yeah, there's something we say at INSEAD, which is leadership is a journey. It is not a destination. And let's just say I have caught that bug. I'm already thinking, okay, what is the next thing that I want to learn? But ultimately, opening myself more to further learnings and using the tools that I have learned, not only to improve my day-to-day in my organization, but to brighten my world. So on my current role, I'm constantly, not only using the tools that I've learned, also scanning as well. Scanning and ensuring that the tools that I'm getting, from industries, I'm able to apply to my work. I'm able to be a better version of me, and obviously to keep learning, because it's a lifelong journey. And obviously, as you get more experienced, as you get more advanced as well in your career, you need to keep learning. You need to keep the brain being renewed, and it's by learning, So yeah, the journey continues. Yeah, the journey continues, definitely.
Fantastic. Well, I think there's a lot more we can converse about. So maybe we can meet up again and have a further chat about some additional topics that you've only touched on briefly today. But for now, Temi, I want to say thank you so very much for your time today and for being so open to sharing with me.
Thank you very, very much. Thanks for having me. And yeah, it's been a fantastic time just going through some of these fantastic topics that are very, very relevant to all of us. So thanks for having
absolutely
me.
Very pertinent to anyone in the workplace, and particularly those looking for, elevating up to leadership roles as well. So thank you. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, then please do subscribe to the show so you don't miss any future episodes. And remember to leave a review telling us about your key learnings and what you enjoyed the most. And do share this podcast with your friends and colleagues so we can spread the word on the importance of personal branding when it comes to your career advancement. And also ensure that others can benefit from these invaluable insights from many inspirational leaders. I will be eternally grateful. And if you are looking to earn more money, to get promoted, to secure your next role and advance your career, and would like me to support you personally on that journey to get you there, then reach out to me and let's arrange a chat. Alternatively, why don't you check out my personal branding launchpad, a group training and mentoring program. Finally, if you'd like to connect with me directly, then do reach out and direct message me on LinkedIn. You can find the link as well as any other resources mentioned in the show notes. I'll see you next time.